Before I start, I gotta make it a little lighter. So I'm gonna tell a little Irish joke.
Okay.
Everything I do is Irish in this thing because
Do we have any good?
yeah. So anyway, Father O'Malley from St. Mary's Church answers his phone. Hello, is this Father O'Malley? It is. This is the IRS. Can you help us? If I can. Do you know a Patty Murphy? I do. Is he a member of your parish? He is. Did he donate $10,000 to your church? He will. All right. So anyway, I'm going to talk about it's called Growing Up Poor in Irish Boston, and I did a podcast on it. So first a quote: "You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream." So says C.S. Lewis. Good morning. Do you folks consider yourself old? Do you still dream? Do you still set goals for yourselves? Do you still get excited about new things? Then you're not old. You're just fully seasoned like me. I'm Rod Murphy. Getting ready for this talk was the first time that I've been in the senior center room, although I walk twice a week out there. Yeah, 16 times. You listen. Yeah. And I'm supposed to be an old fogey. However, I disagree. I get up every morning at 5 a.m. and start on whatever project I'm working on. I have written 3 books. 2 years ago, I created an online course on how to become an entrepreneur. 43 years ago, I started a Worcester charity, and I continue to run it today. My wife died 5 years ago, so I'm a widower. But I'm not dead. And I might be found in a good restaurant or a concert with an attractive, mature woman. Travel is also on my schedule, so I continue to resist the tag of old fogey. Thanks for being here. If you're like me, you had to force yourself to learn the internet and all the various techie stuff that goes with it, the computer and the smartphone kind of things. Before the internet, I would ask friends who were experts on things that I didn't know about. But that didn't always work. They weren't always correct. Now I go to Google or AI for those answers. But for deeper dives, I go to YouTube or Apple or Spotify podcasts for answers to my questions. There are many different kinds of podcast types and subjects covered, so I have become a regular user of podcasts. That led me to create my own podcasts. Making podcasts is complicated and somewhat costly. Necessary things like internet apps and podcast-specific programs cost money. So I've been slow and careful setting up my series. But now I have figured out most of it and have published over 100 episodes. They run from 4 minutes to 15 minutes, depending on the subject matter. Podcasts are replacing broadcast news. They're becoming an increasingly popular, influential source of news and information. Radio's moment has passed, and podcasts are taking center stage. Here are the numbers. 26% of Americans 12 or older tune into weekly to podcasts. 19+% of business brands are successfully advertised on podcasts. 72% of loyal listeners make purchases from podcasts. Podcasts is no longer the future. It's happening now, and here are the reasons. Increased accessibility. Smartphones, high-speed internet make it easier for audiences to access podcasts. Diverse content. Podcasts catering to niche-down interests and demographics. This diversity allows folks to get our own personal preferences information. Things such as cooking or square dancing, learning languages, knitting, carpentry, and much more. And on-demand listening Podcasts allow listeners to choose when and how they consume their podcast, whether it's during commuting or walking or cooking or whatever. And low production costs. Podcast production requires less resources than other media. This results in a boom of budget podcasters like me. Engaging formats. Podcasts employ storytelling, newsworthy interviews, and other conversations, making it all very engaging. My podcast uses storytelling only, no interviews. Celebrity involvement. Famous people getting into podcasting has attracted their fan bases. Cultural shifts. Listener habits among audiences who prefer podcasts is increasing over traditional media. In the COVID pandemic, increased demand for at-home entertainment, so podcast use has increased for those seeking news and storytelling and connection. I heard recently there's something called legacy podcasts. It's people, older people who want to leave something of themselves when they die. So they set up interviews with family members. It's all done privately. It's not open to the public. And then they're interviewed, the older person, so that there's something for those people to go back and look 5 years from now. I just read about that. All those factors have combined to help podcasts become a mainstream media. Now back to my podcast series. My episodes relate either to New England or Boston in its long history. I talk about the Irish wave of newcomers in the last century during the Great Irish Famine, which was caused by the British overlords. My family was part of that immigration. I talk about the Yankee anti-Catholic attitudes, which targeted Irish Catholics in Boston with hatred and discrimination, and how that affected my father's lack of better employment and my older brother's lack of opportunity after graduating cum laude from Harvard on a scholarship. As I grew into an adult, it had mostly ended and didn't affect me. Most of my episodes focus on my near poverty and my humorous and often delinquent youthful adventures in the big city. I wrote these stories as a book, and I'm now using the book for my podcast. My now grown children love my telling of those stories and bugged me to write them down, so I finally did. The book included historical material, some philosophy, some sad stuff, lots of opinion, lots of Irish humor from a very fortunate guy who's lived a long and colorful life. Although most of this podcast series is stories about my youth, I have added grown-up stories also. Warning, we Irish are an acquired taste, and sometimes we're not very tasteful. Who am I? I'm Roderick Patrick Murphy, born in 1939. I grew up in a large Irish family in Irish Catholic Boston. I was happily married to Jean Michaud Murphy for over 50 years until her death in 2020. We were blessed with 6 grown children, 8 grandchildren, and now 3 great-grandchildren. We raised our children here in Southbridge. I now live alone on Dresser Street in a big 1885 Victorian. Until last year, I was a business owner here in Southbridge. I owned an industrial machinery business on Morris Street. I kind of retired in 2024, but can't stop working, thus my podcast. Working is ingrained in me, maybe because I started working at 8 years old and never stopped. I was born just before World War II and lived through the American post-war boom, a golden era when freedom, ambition, and success happened. Seems not to happen as much now. So that's my story. But I'm nothing special. You could start a podcast too. It's possible for a wide range of people, even old farts. However, it's most suitable for those who meet at least some of the following criteria. Maybe one or more of you should try it. Who should start a podcast? Experts or enthusiasts in some kind of niche. If you have some deep knowledge or a strong passion or for a specific topic, whether it's mechanics, macrame, parenting, hunting, gambling, or even something obscure like raising orchids or making rhubarb jelly. You could attract a loyal audience. Well, I like rhubarb jelly. Anyway, storytellers and entertainers. Maybe you're naturally good at telling stories, being funny, or keeping people engaged. Podcasting would give you a great platform to shine. People looking to build a personal brand. Podcasting helps establish a showcase in a certain craft or other specialties, and it would showcase your voice and values and deepen connections with your audience. Businesses and nonprofits start podcasts as marketing tools to educate their potential clients and customers and share in industry insights or push a brand. Or maybe you want an excuse to talk to interesting people in your field, inviting them onto your podcast. It's a great way to build those relationships. So who would not be good at podcasting? People who aren't uncomfortable, don't enjoy conversation. People who expect instant success because podcasts take beaucoup time to grow an audience. People without a clear topic or audience in mind. Anyone not willing to commit time consistently at writing, recording, editing, and promotion. So what do you need to start making your own podcast? First, you need a good idea for your theme. An iPad is a good way to record video podcasts. I then convert the video to audio for the audio type podcast programs. A good microphone and a quiet place to record, some podcast making apps. Then you need to sign up with a host like Buzzsprout or Podbean. So now, how about if I play one of my episodes so you can get a flavor? Before this episode begins, a short description of this growing up in Irish Boston in the 1940s podcast. Episode number 12, Weinstein's Fence. I grew up in the 40s and 50s when many people, including kids, raised pigeons on their three-decker roofs. All over Boston and other big northern cities, young people had pigeon coops built on roofs with perches and nest boxes and landing platforms and tough wire mesh to keep the predators away. Cats, rats, raccoons, hawks, and snakes are some of the pigeons' predators. Mickey Mickle, later to become a successful bookie, and I lived in the same three-decker. He on the third floor, me on the second. Some of our neighbors raised pigeons. Some types of pigeons raised nearby were tumblers, rollers, and Belgian racing pigeons. I think all of those were homing pigeons, or what we call homers. When we were about 10 years old, Basil Iliopoulos, a pal who with his father had a pigeon coop on his roof, offered to give us 3 rollers, which were extra to their flock. Rollers are bred to do rapid backward somersaults and spin very fast while dropping 20 feet or more. They are usually flown in a flock and performed in a group. We wanted those rollers because we thought we could put on a flying show for our friends. Also, we could show off how rollers can be trained to return to the coop on the breeder's voice command. There are some folks who hate pigeons. Those people call them flying rats. I have recently seen on a pigeon fancier's website the following theory, quote, God devised pigeons as a means of punishment for man. Probably after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, he wanted to make sure that people would never again feel comfortable enough in a city to repeat the sins committed there. And he created the pigeons as a means to make the city dwellers' lives more miserable as a constant reminder of their past sins, unquote. We never agreed with such pigeon theology or philosophy. In fact, we didn't agree with any philosophy. We were mutton-headed kids, for Pete's sake. So we decided to take the free birds that summer. Questions arose. Where do we put the coop? What do we use for wood and nails, etc.? What would our parents say about it? If we put it on our three-decker roof, would the landladies object? Could we build it without any adults knowing about it. Where would the money come from for the 50-pound bags of bird feed? Strategic questions for two meat-headed pre-adolescents to grapple with. We decided that we could acquire the nails and the black top paper for waterproofing the coop from what we called the plaster yard, which was directly across Alston Street from our house. It was previously operated by the late Mr. Chapin, whose widow, an old recluse, lived in the house which fronted the former wholesale business. The defunct business was high fenced, gated, and locked up, but there was still much inventory stored there. Bringing some scrap pieces of wood to the roof of our house to begin the coop, we were immediately shooed off by the spinster Riley sisters, our landladies who lived on the first floor. We then asked Mrs. Senecal, the almost senile cousin of the Rileys who lived next door, if we could put the coop in her backyard. She docilely agreed and would have agreed if we asked her to fly out her second floor window. Unsuccessfully, we looked around the neighborhood for falling down buildings that we could strip. Then I remembered the Weinstein scrapyard located on River Street. They had just torn down their old rotted wood fence and replaced it with brand new wide pine board fence painted Kelly green. Our plan was to take their old fencing that we thought would still be behind their new fence. To get to the fence, we needed to take a shortcut through the vacant lot next door to Pelrine's yard and just across the street from our house. Unfortunately, the old wood had already been disposed of, so we began to look at the Weinstein's new fence lustfully. Should we rip boards from the new fence? Could we get away with it? When would we do it? After looking around unsuccessfully for other wood sources, we finally figured that Friday after dark would be the best time to strip Weinstein's fence. The business was closed on Saturday and Sunday, and no one could see what we were doing at night, and we had time on the weekend to build the coop. We had hammers, saws, and crowbars borrowed from our father's toolboxes. We then stripped enough planks from our Jewish patron to build the coop. We took some 2x4s also. Our coop was to be about 5 foot by 5 foot by 5 foot with a flat roof and cut down broomsticks inside for perches. We used orange crates for nesting boxes, and we built a window ledge-like platform for the birds. We also built a trap, which was a one-way device that lets birds into the coop but not out. We waterproofed the walls and roof with tar paper so the Kelly green paint couldn't be seen. We put newspapers on the floor of the coop to ease in cleaning the bird droppings. We built a feeding trough and used borrowed crockery bowls from home for watering the birds. We received all our advice on building the coop from our neighborhood bird fanciers. For a couple of non-trained larcenous meatheads, our finished pigeon coop looked pretty good. On Monday, we got our rollers and were given directions from Iliopolis on how to take care of them. One instruction I remember was that pigeons often got big cankers in their mouth. They would starve if the canker was not removed. The first aid procedure was brutal. We had one bird that had a mouth canker. Basil lit a wooden match, and Mickey held the bird while Basil, with a still hot but extinguished match, burned the canker from the bird's mouth. So after all that to do, we were very excited and ready to become roller pigeon experts. Tuesday afternoon, we were out at the coop, making like we knew what we were doing, when my father came home early from work, a very unusual occurrence. He came over to the fence between our yard and the Senecal's yard, our pigeon's location. He called me over to him, which I immediately did along with Mickey. I knew something bad was about to happen. He sternly asked about the source of the wood and the materials for the coop. He then asked where we got the birds. We gave him shuffling gobbledygook answers. He then left without saying much and walked out of the yard toward Weinstein's. We found out later that either the police or Mr. Weinstein reconnoitered around the neighborhood and found the just constructed wood coop and figured that's where their new fence went. I think it had to be Mr. Weinstein because the Cambridge cops were stupid and lazy. I think Dad spoke with Mickey's parents and arranged some repayment to Mr. Weinstein for the wood. There was a loud, but I think perfunctory parental criticism in punishment of both kids, and we were forced to give back the birds and tear down the coop and return the wood to Weinstein. Surprisingly, the punishment at home wasn't too bad. Rethinking it today, I think Dad and the other adults got a secret chuckle from our endeavors. And further thinking now, I wonder about the prevalent attitude our low-income neighbors and my parents had. That attitude was, it was almost, but not quite okay to steal from well-off people, insurance companies, or the government. We were two Catholic school kids strictly trained by the nuns, but somehow, thou shalt not steal didn't seem to apply in this case. We never considered the moral factors, just the can we get away with it factors. Looking back, I know it was stealing, but it was generally winked at and didn't seem like theft to us then. Thank you for viewing or listening to my podcast episode. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, and if you so choose, I ask you to send a good review and perhaps refer friends who might be interested in this podcast series. Again, my thanks. All I got to say is, in conclusion, while broadcasting is not replacing radio or TV broadcasting, it's certainly offering an alternative and increasingly popular for audiences. So rather than a replacement, it represents an evolution in media consumption. So anyway, that's thank you. I got 100 of those, and there's stories like that. There's stories. Yeah. Yeah.
You have an archive online of all?
I got them now on YouTube.
Okay.
I got 100 of them on YouTube. So if you can go to Growing Up Poor in Irish Boston, you can watch them. All my family loves them. Sometimes they're a little nervous what I'm going to say, though.